Good evening, folks. I am Ryan Murphy, and I teach AP Stats here at Del Val High School. I want to thank you for coming to tonight's virtual back to school night. I want to make sure that you're getting something useful from this, so I'm going to try to be as informative and concise as possible. I want to tell you a little bit something about the course content, how I approach the course, what you could expect to see on Canvas if you were to look at what your student would see on any given day, and also maybe give you some background about me as a person. So me as a person, Mr. Murphy. By the way, you can find any teacher's email address as first name, last name @dvrhs.org. Should you wish to contact any of us, I have my laptop in front of me most of the time. So please feel free to reach out if you'd like. I am a proud 2013 graduate of Rutgers Graduate School of Education. I feel like I learned a lot from that school. And like I said, I'm proud to have come from there. More recently, another source of pride is that I completed my supervisor certification program from Rowan University, another program from which I feel like I learned a lot. But more locally here at Del Val, I am a math and computer science teacher. So I may have had your student previously in honors geometry, in which case it's nice to have them back again. But if not, it's also great to meet them for the first time too. I do teach computer science principles, AP computer science principles, so there is some slight chance that I will have had your student thrice if they're interested in that course, which is another good one. Non-academically speaking, I am co-advisor for Sport and Spirit Club, which is a club where our students show up to sporting events and kind of help things run smoothly, whether they be ball fetchers, or scorekeepers or announcers. Sometimes they sell merchandise and work stands. Sometimes they fundraise too. It's a good club to be a part of, to be actively involved in our sporting scene. And also there are some perks for seniors. Also, since AP Stats students tend to be upperclassmen, it might be worth noting that I do personally SAT prep instruction over the summer through Del Val, and it is worth considering for a student who still has to take the SATs. Me as a person, my hobbies, I play the drums. There they are in the picture. As have a lot of people been, I'm sure, during quarantine. I've been working on fitness lately, and I play games. And here are my two dogs, Oliver and Benji, in all their fluffy cuteness. So AP Stats. I probably shouldn't pick favorite courses, but AP Stats is definitely amongst them because I feel like it is one of the most important and one of the most applicable in modern everyday life. It is a little bit different from previous math classes in that it's not purely computational. Not that all other math classes are, but this one even more so. It is a lot more data-driven and analytical, and there's a good portion of stats that doesn't involve numbers at all. There's an entire chapter dedicated to experimental design, but still, knowing how to collect good data before being able to use it and perform computations with it is a very important skill that is often overlooked in other math classes, I think. And right now, in a day and age where it's very easy to find misinformation online, and it's very important to be able to have a reliable way of gathering knowledge and truth and wisdom in the world. It's very important that students understand some statistical principles, ones that relate to experimental design as well, but also being able to correctly interpret results that, for example, an experiment or a study might say. So there's some points where we actually do look at actual statistical studies, and a lot of .gov website products, like things from census.gov, we're able to interpret confidence intervals. We're able to look at medical studies from like the New England Journal of Medicine and look at things that for most people would probably just be mumbo jumbo, but we'll actually be able to get a keen understanding of these things and why peer-reviewed articles are such reliable sources of knowledge. Me as a teacher, the way that I approach the course from a learning perspective, I try to make it as exploratory as possible. I try to do as little lecturing as possible, and I try to make it more hands-on whenever that's something that can be achieved for any given lesson. Later on in this video, I'll show some lessons or some snippets from lessons so that you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Me personally, though, the way that I try to balance things, or the things that I see as important in any given course or lesson, there's always the basic principles, the basic understanding, the minor things that they're out to remember, like definitions, the computations, like can you solve for the things that need to be solved. There's always things like that, but I try to keep a balance between that and helping students develop a more nuanced understanding of the core concepts that underlie any given topic and be able to critically think through them. So this is especially applicable in AP classes where students are a little more mathematically inclined, but it might involve approaching questions in a way that maybe they see a question that they've never seen before. And it's not that they've never seen it before because they're ill prepared, but they've never seen it before because we never know what types of problems life is going to pose to us. But to be truly educated is to be able to see those types of problems, something that you've never seen before, and be able to handle it anyway, because you have the prerequisite knowledge and you have the critical thinking abilities. That's the best part of this class, I think, rather than just copy paste new problems, but with different numbers. That being said, on top of the nuance and the abstract ideas of working with variables and the you know, the more like nitty gritty mathematical details behind things, it is also good that in this class, we are able to look at the practical applications of stats topics as well. So knowing that this is an AP class, I do go through the curriculum, make sure that students have hit every bullet point to be prepared for the AP test, but I am also aware of students' needs and try to account for that as well in terms of what they're possibly going into in the future, or how some of these stats principles might apply in real time. I try to get contemporary data and examples as often as possible, because that just keeps the class interesting. And it makes it so that students are prepared to tackle the world that's in front of them as it is. So this was actually part of the summer work here. And this is an example that I ripped straight from the notes, where students have to look at each of these graphs and try to interpret why it's wrong. As I did in the summer work, I said to students that they can feel free to pause the video and take some time to look at it, which you are free to do as well. But I'm going to continue through it to just briefly show why each of these is an example of a bad graph. So we might talk about motivations behind why these graphs are bad. For example, you can imagine here, they added depth to these, or they added width to these bars as well, in order to kind of make you compare areas rather than heights to perhaps exaggerate the difference. Here, the differences in the bar heights are rather exaggerated. This is only a little bit more than 1.5% difference between these two candidates, but the guy on the left actually owns this network. Top right, Channel 2 News probably didn't present this goofy chart because of any nefarious reason. I would imagine it's a computer glitch or someone behind the scenes pressed wrong buttons. These are all things worth considering. Another not so analytical piece, another piece that's purely computational, is something that relates to, for example, hypothesis testing. Again, this is a page that was ripped straight out of a set of notes, so it's what students would look at on a given class. And it is presented like this fairly often, where students are just asked to fill in the blanks rather than write every single thing. That cuts down on some of the tedium, which allows them to be engaged more. This picture right here is a link to something that they have in Canvas. It is a dynamic program where they could change the sliders and see how changing one variable might affect the rest of them. And this relates to the greater concept of hypothesis testing, which relates to error, and how sometimes you have to sacrifice precision for confidence and vice versa. We eventually talk about the answers, which would be just filling in the blank, and then we would go further with this lesson as well. This is just one part of it. Another thing, like I said, that we would talk about is experimental design. So notice how in this problem, there's not very many numbers at all, or at least the numbers aren't particularly significant in this problem. It's more about being able to collect good data and differentiate between correlation and causation. Here's another example of this that relates to marketing. I have a friend who's in marketing who actually works with the statistical side. And grabs data to, for example, one time they told me that they were grabbing data from a salsa company locally to try to see to what demographics their product appealed. And that's data that's worth gathering for marketing purposes. So not only could this be interesting and applicable in most real world situations, but it could also be a pretty lucrative topic. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a brief Canvas tour. I am in student mode, so this is what your students would see once they come onto my class in Canvas. There's about the teacher, which is something you can see once and probably be done with it. I already talked about myself. There's the This Week button, which takes you to the set of modules. I order my contents by topic, not by date. I know some teachers have weekly modules. Instead, I just have one module that contains the summary for any given week. Here's this week, for example, where there's learning objectives, guiding questions, a brief summary of what we'll be up to, and then some resources at the end, as well as a little table, a little calendar about what's going on any given week. Again, feel free to pause that if you'd like to look a little further. For class info, there is one thing that I want to talk about, one additional thing, and that is the grading policy, which is that things are point-based. There's the typical things that you'd expect to see. Homework is often graded. I don't always assign homework, but when I do, it's typically graded. It's not just reflective, but sometimes homework is put out there for students to learn new things and try to come to conclusions on their own, which I think is a very important concept for homework. I don't think it should just solely be relegated to practice problems to get good at stuff that we talked about. I think homework can be used as a tool to move forward too. Additionally, though, there is something called EAs, entrance assessments. Those are for students to kind of check up on themselves. For example, if we were to, on Tuesday, for example, have finished the lesson, I would expect the next time that I see them on Thursday to have taken some steps to master that content, whether that means doing additional practice or looking through the notes or reaching out. That way that they would be prepared for a couple small questions related to that topic at the beginning of the next class. That would allow me to give them feedback, and that would help them to see where they stand in terms of how well they are comfortable with the content. Because it would be very bad to get to a quest, which is a cute way of saying a quiz test, something in between. And it'd be sad for them to get that far and then recognize that they don't know what they're doing. So the EAs and the homeworks and the feedback provided for those help. One other thing that's noteworthy is the retake policy. I allow students to have second chances on pretty much anything. They can go and take an alternate version of any of these things to receive full credit in place of the old one. They are different enough that a student can't really fudge their way through the first one and try to memorize answers and then do well on the second one because of their memorization. It's totally different questions just related to the topic. So if they do better on the second time around, it's because they have improved their knowledge. And that was the target goal in the first place. So that should just about do it. I fear I'm running a little bit long here. So I want to thank you for coming this evening, or rather thank you for viewing my video this evening. And I want you to feel free to reach out. I hope that this was informative, and that if you would like to have further conversation, that you feel free to email me. Once again, thank you for your time.